Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you here with us today. I've been really looking forward to this webinar because we have a couple of my favorite gentlemen joining us today, and I think you guys are here for the same reason. You are with us to glean some knowledge. You've made this time for yourself today to join us and one another. And so first, I thank you for being here. My name is Jess Jones. I'm with the Kaufherr Center. We are the member resource center that serves SAG-AFTRA and equity members in the Chicago regional area. We look forward to seeing you again soon, but in the meantime, we are so glad that you're with us. Grateful for these virtual platforms that we could get together and continue to make space to learn, engage, grow community, and be with one another. Without further ado, I'm gonna ask my friend Bill to join me. Bill, who's going to be my co-master of ceremonies today. Bill and I got together on this conversation about what is it that people can be looking for. Hi, Bill.
How's it going? Thanks.
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Looking forward to this.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for manifesting this dream with me today.
Yeah, it came about pretty organically. It started simply enough, and the next thing you know, it expanded to include the genius of Jean and James to be a part of this discussion. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we were chatting about kind of where people are at, or what the conversations we've been having have been, and what kind of conversations can we be having to support one another in the pursuit of work, in the pursuit of excellence. And of course, yourself and these gentlemen are going to hold a torch to that topic, I'm sure, because you guys have been actively doing it during this time of quarantine, and making work manifest in remote ways. And with a number of our members, just that conversation of transitioning into this work and what does that look like, and what can we take with us as we come out of this experience and get ready for charging ahead and claiming the jobs that come our way. But I guess I'm gonna leave you to it. I'm gonna take off, folks. I'm gonna let you know if you have sent us any questions in advance. We have shared those questions with our panelists already. So those may be incorporated into our conversation. If you have any questions during the webinar, please hold those to the end. We will do some Q&A at the end, and we'll bring those in. And you can, if you notice on Zoom, I don't know how many people have done the webinar thing, there's the Q&A down at the bottom. So if you think of questions that you want to ask our guests today, by all means, please save those for the end, and please do bring them into the conversation. But without further ado, I'm gonna throw it over to you, Bill.
Okay, thanks. Cool. Yeah, let's bring in Jean and James. Jess, just wanted to thank you and Henrique for making this possible. I think you guys know that the Kaufherr Center does rely on donations in order to exist and survive. So I think any donation, it doesn't have to be huge, but any donation would help in that regard. So if you're inclined, if you can, please do that. Also, I would like to introduce and thank our esteemed panelists, James, Vincent, Meredith, and Jean Weygandt, who I'm really very happy were available, and also just so generously, agreeing to do this kind of thing. It's awesome. They both have a lot in common. I mean, they're both two of Chicago's finest actors in general. Major stage experience, both very successful voiceover careers. They've shot television series. The Chicago market is a unique place. New York's kind of the same way, but Chicago market allows an actor to do so many of these different things, but to be able to be successful at all of them is something that I hold in high esteem. And that's why these two gentlemen are, it's a treat to have you guys on for a talk like this. So welcome. I guess I'll start off by saying that, let's see here. Well, anyway, we wanted to start off with the idea of how you guys expanded from expanded your repertoires to include voiceover work, because both of you started out as stage actors. And, what kinds of adjustments did you make when you transitioned to VO?
Gene.
Mine's sort of a long, stupid story. I went into my agent's office and I talked to the girl who did voiceover, the woman who did voiceover. And I said, I think I could do voiceover. I'd like to get involved in that. And she said, oh, no, I don't think you could ever do that.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay, sorry. Because I thought it was like talking and reading words and into a microphone, and I thought I would be able to do that. And she was pretty sure that I couldn't. But then she called. I happened to be in the office one day, and she said, "Gene, I promised the client I would have 10 people on this audition. You're completely wrong for it, but would you be the 10th person?" I said, "Oh, absolutely, anything." And of course I booked it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And sort of away I went, accidentally. And then they started calling me, and little by little, and I wasn't paying much attention to it. I was trying to be a stage actor, trying to figure out what that was. And Linda Brasiliano, who was at that agency for a while, took me under her wing, and just was enormously helpful and encouraging to me. And that kind of got things moving for me.
I just turned equity, and I was feeling really good about myself. And then I started getting all these kind of tier-in contracts, theater tier-in stuff. And, when you're taking home like $109 after taxes every week, and I was like, I need another gig, and I'd heard about voiceover, and I didn't really have an agent at the time. And so I was actually asked by Goodman to record something for a show called Gym of the Ocean that they were doing at the time. It was kind of an ad for it. Non-union. It was just something to do. And I said, I'll do it, but could you give me a disc of it? Cause I'd love to make copies of this disc at Kinko's and send it to, a number of agents. And so I got the disc, I went to Kinko's, I copied it up, and I sent it to these agents, and Stuart Talent got back to me, and they started sending me on things, and to their credit, they just kept submitting me when I was really brand new to it and had no idea what I was doing. And just their patience with me made me so happy when I got my first gig. So I guess the short version is I was like, please listen to my demo, with this 160 that I recorded for a theater, and then kind of went from there.
That's amazing. I think that, obviously they scored big when you came on, because you also were available for across the board. Now you do everything or most things through Stuart, right?
Sure. Actually, I started with them via VoiceOver, and only after working with them there for a time did they say, hey, why don't you go upstairs and meet everyone else. And so I went up there, and I also went downstairs and tried to do a little bit of print. That didn't work out so well, but I went upstairs and was able to meet the theater agents and camera people. And so, but I literally got started via VoiceOver there.
That's amazing. So the next obvious question is, did you guys find that coming from a stage, or theatrical, I think, you can call it that, background, that the technical requirements of voiceover, like being able to speed up parts of the script, or, stressing operative words, or being quote unquote conversational, that kind of thing. Did that throw you guys, or, were you taking classes? Did you do any workshops, that kind of thing?
I didn't really take a lot of workshops. I did take a couple. There's this guy, he's pretty good. I think his last name's Rohlfing. I did a couple of workshops with him. Bill Rohlfing, actually.
Like you needed me, right? Yeah.
Well, what was cool about it, and I wish this sort of thing was still going on. The idea that you can record a script, and then you can actually see how it's actually done on TV, or you can hear how it's done on the radio. And that was so eye-opening to me, because you come into a script thinking it has to go a certain way, and you're trying to play to your strengths, just like an actor. We all have our own things that we lean on, and I do that vocally as well. And then you realize you actually see the finished product, and you learn, oh, I could have done that if I just trusted my ability to make this choice or that choice. And so I didn't really have as much as far as instruction beyond, that sort of thing, Bill, but it was super helpful for me. And it
Well,
didn't really,
yeah.
they're so different to me, stage and, camera versus this. Like, to me, they're very different animals.
Yeah, we'll get more into that in a moment. But I mean, I really enjoyed doing those groups because actually I enjoyed having the people together.
Yeah.
I did a couple years ago come up with a format for doing a virtual version of it and never did anything with it. So maybe I'll have to do that, James. You can come hang with us. I am going to do a voiceover jam next month that will include some of that stuff. So if people are interested, they can check that out because I'm happy to share that kind of stuff. But man, when you have a young kid, it's hard to do any of that kind of stuff. And I love doing it. It was so much fun. So maybe we'll have to bring that back. So Gene, how about yourself?
Well, a couple of things happened to me. I fell in with some people who were doing all the voices for places like Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz Pizza. Those places, and they had those little animatronic critters that would be like they were a rock and roll band, and we did everything, and I think it's okay to say. And Larry Moran was a friend of theirs, and
of course he was.
Larry Moran was a voiceover giant, or however you would describe him in Chicago, and was really excelled at his craft and had paid a lot of attention to it and all of that sort of thing. But he would always come in and work for them for an hour. And we would do all of Larry's stuff as fast as we could to get him in and out. We might be there for 12 or 18 hours. They'd bring in pizza and stuff. But I got to spend all that time in the studio and just learning some of the terminology and technique from people, just all the little things, the vari-speed that they could do to make you less pitchy on a song, and all the little crazy ad-libs that they threw into the rests in the music, and those sorts of things. And it sort of got me started and gave me a sense of confidence in the studio about how to behave. Where do you stand? How do you stand? Should you have a bottle of water? And
Yeah,
the simplest, little, most basic things. Because I was with friends, it was easy to admit my ignorance, and so they coached me. And obviously everybody wanted me to succeed, and so they coached me along, and I picked up an awful lot of good information in that way.
that's amazing. I often find that sort of sense about a session with the people that you're working with, that, it's not antagonistic. You can sort of calm down, sort of be within yourself and do the work. I think that makes a big difference. And for you to be able to learn from observing and being part of that and being among friends, but to see how things work, that's amazing. I mean, that's like such a rare opportunity,
To see Larry take off his wristwatch and put it on the music stand.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to take a chance of bumping his watch against the stand and making noise. And just to see that he worked with his hands as everyone does. And then for there to be a section and for them to say, Larry, you're 4 seconds long, or whatever, 4/10 of a second long, whatever it happened to be. But we need it out of the middle paragraph.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
And I went, oh, you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. It's really not, rocket surgery.
Yeah. And there are techniques for doing just exactly that.
You go a little faster and you go a little slower.
From the standpoint of the technique of acting, I've often thought that, given the fact that, the type of, you guys do stuff across the board, but voiceover is different, especially commercial voiceover, which is a big part of what we do here in Chicago. You show up, they hand you a script and they say, act. I find it that it's much more like improv acting, where you have to get a sense about the script very quickly, and then you have to be able to execute that and make it work. what do you guys think about that? And are there other observations that you may have in terms of distinguishing voiceover from the other kinds of acting you do?
As I'm looking at a script right now, it's so funny. Like I find myself trying to get the clues just like you would, in a show, in a play. Like, what, in theater, they always tell you, what do other characters say about you, or you're trying to get as many clues as you can, whether it's on a storyboard, whether it's on, a link to a scratch track, whether it's, the names that they drop for references, although they always drop the same names, it seems to me.
Well, for you probably,
and so but all that stuff is useful, to trying to figure out the tone that they want. And then I'm also looking at, past stuff that they've done, if I'm looking on, whether a particular car or insurance or a college or whatever, like a lot of these schools, I mean, Gene, like they all have they have a tone that they want to give you. Like they have a particular style, a particular speed or warmth or whatever that their tones, that their ads have. And so you try and find that too. And sometimes you got to like bang out 3 or 4 of these, and your son's upstairs and he wants to eat. And it's like, you just got to get it done. And so you look as much as you can, and then you try and knock out a couple that you're with. And the one thing I always remember my agent saying was like, particularly the more that I do this at home now, as far as even whether it's auditions, which I've been doing at home for a few years, but, don't do more than 2 or 3, like, because otherwise you're in there, you could be in there for half an hour trying to work on a sentence, because, I think we all in our booths, we know how our voice sounds and where its sweet spot is and how to get, the warmth or the sweetness in for this particular word, but you've got to have 3 different takes and how, and so you can start to kind of pull at your hair a little bit if you don't just say, look, let me get this done in 3 takes. Could you repeat the question?
If I may, I have a little bit different take on the question, and I certainly agree with everything that James has said in terms of looking for clues and the analysis and all that sort of thing. Is this obviously a punchline? Does that tell me, is my character the usual idiot husband, or do I know what I'm talking about here? And is the deal where my wife knows everything and I'm a nudge? But I try to think about what it is they're really selling, because they're not selling cars and they're not selling sofas. They're selling exclusivity,
right,
selling comfort, or they're selling fear, or whatever it is they're really selling. And I try to think about the script in terms of what's the story we're telling that makes mom feel like she's going to be a good mom if she will just buy this cough syrup. Then you're a good mom. Don't worry. I know your kid is sick, but if you do this, don't worry. You're going to be a good mom. It'll be okay. No one can yell at you. Those kinds of goofy things. Or are they saying, you know what? You're really not good enough to buy a Cadillac, are you? Sorry. And it makes everybody go, oh, I want 3. I'm going to buy 3.
Yeah.
What is the psychology of it? And then how does this story suit that?
Mm-hmm.
How does this story help that psychological game that the advertiser is trying to play?
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I've got a question to sort of go slightly deeper with all that. And that is, do you actually, oftentimes for myself, and I amuse myself to no end with auditions, because I'll come up with an alternate narrative that is parallel, but in a way kind of substitutes for, it's kind of like old school method acting, which would not be advised on stage when you have other actors to work from and whatnot, and you have a really fantastic script writer. But especially when you got to put lipstick on the pig as a voiceover, it's hard, and I hate to say that because there's always a reason for that, but if it's written by the lawyers. But so Gene, I want to ask you, it's like, do you use any of those kinds of things? Do you kind of, in order, say, to get an emotional edge or to bring out some dynamic, so the details of a script through your voice, we can feel it as an actor. You're an actor. What kinds of things do you do? Or is it something that's sort of more automatic now at this point in your career, that you're just accessing the right hemisphere of your brain more or something,
It was more automatic. It was automatic when I first started and didn't really particularly know what I was doing. And then I began to become more conscious of it. And now I think it's sort of automatic again. But for example, and I just find it so useful to begin a sentence by going,
right.
or I think to myself, I'll be darned. Or
Yes.
whatever gets me, and if you're a more pure just actor and not familiar with voiceover, well, there's your moment before. You don't need to do
Right.
the whole morning and walking up the stairs, the other guy, and
Yeah, right.
all that stuff. But you will find that those kinds of things, a V8 moment or whatever, I'll be or Jesus. And of course, swearing. I like to swear.
Yeah.
You can't swear on the radio.
No, but that helps. Yeah.
You can think it.
Right.
You can think.
Yeah.
Right. No one knows, but it puts something that's real behind that, and then I pepper the script with that kind of stuff, whether it's allowed or not. It makes it a conversation.
Yeah.
It makes it a scene. It makes it a story.
Yeah, and if you're working with your friends, you can do that. Just
exactly.
cut it out, baby.
You're working with your friends, or and then it's like any monologue. Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
You're not just standing there in the middle of outer space saying to be or not to be. That is the question. Hamlet's talking to somebody, and it might be the voice of his own thoughts, but he's imagining talking to someone. And if you're doing that with yourself and you're playing that game, that makes the audience, that makes the listener play that game with you. It brings them in. And it doesn't matter what you're thinking about. They'll never know, but it'll cause them to think and to see pictures.
Or maybe all you need is to imagine being hit in the head with a 2x4.
I'd forgotten that one.
I love that. That's got to be the best direction ever given.
I tell that story. So I went into this session.
I'm sorry, you have to though. It's so funny. Yeah.
And the director kept wanting me to slow down, and we just don't want any sort of an energetic read at all. And after a little bit, he said, "Just imagine you've been hit in the head with a 2x4." And I okay. And they seemed delighted with whatever it was that I did. One of the more interesting pieces of direction I've ever gotten.
So James, you want to weigh in on that?
No, that all sounds awesome. I'm like taking notes.
Especially the hitting part.
No, but I love the moment before, and which makes me think of a total tangent, but a director who I've worked with before around O.J. Parson, who would always say the line, but add a blank blank afterwards, and then
exactly.
And so that would always give that would wake the line up, that would give it intention, that would give it specificity, and it keeps it from sounding flat. That's such a great note. There's something there that activates that line, right?
Exactly. It causes you to do it. My friend Harvey in California would do things like, he'd say, "Just give me the 'you son of a bitch' read." And you know exactly what he's talking about. Or he'd look through the glass and you'd do a take and he would go, and you know exactly what he means. So those little things like that, and that, that if you're thinking "you son of a bitch," or you tack that on to the end.
Sure.
It change, and I don't care what you say. You can say "happy birthday," but go ahead, tack "you son of a bitch" onto the end, and it's going to change that read.
That's funny. I just think about like unusual moments before, like where someone looks at you and goes, what the hell happened to you, James? He's like, you guys are, you go through an emotional exercise where it comes out wrong. But I was gonna say that, there are a lot of different, styles of voiceover, a lot of different avenues. But, there's obviously the occasions where you are the person, say like someone taking a drug or and you've got to be, it's more like an on-camera read, those in many respects, or most often it's a presentational read. It's like you're looking down on the action and you are commenting with point of view on something that's going on. Sometimes more stylized, used to be that voiceovers were more of like, like we were talking about the singer doing more of an announcer type read, someone that would be coming from that thing, and sometimes character voices and that kind of thing. Is that something you guys welcome? And or do you find that you do best in one particular capacity or another? And how do you deal with like these different opportunities? Would you consider yourselves people who can sort of do more stylized or more sort of, no, I'm doing a 1950s announcer kind of a thing, or, different character voices and the like, that kind of thing?
I tend to get more quote unquote announcery stuff, and I don't get as much of the character aspect things, but there are some where you're thinking about like the room, the room that you're talking to, like, are you talking to one person, are you talking to a room of people, are you presenting this to them, are you trying to draw them in? And so those I try to use those sorts of clues and ideas as I can from take to take, particularly if they're looking for like, 2 or 3 different takes. And I try to, try and hit all 3 of those. I remember Mindy Verson would always say to me when I was in her studio, she'd just say, just talk really soft, as soft to me as you can. Just talk to me, just get close to the mic, and just as though you're just trying to speak to me about how unspeakably horrible this is and that I'm on your side. And I remember we did that for a State Farm one once, I think. And I remember I hadn't talked that softly in front of a mic in a long time, but the best directors will get you to do that, right? They'll get you to find ways to keep it from being so kind of straight down the line or quote unquote announcery, to give you that specificity. So I use that when I can, but I don't usually get the character stuff as much unless I'm doing like, video games or that sort of thing.
Yes. Right. Gene?
I don't do very much of that that straight announcer thing. I don't get it. I just don't get called for that very often. I don't think I'm particularly good at it. I know guys who are good at doing a little send up of it, and you can't quite tell when you first start to listen. You go, wait, is that for real? Oh no, he's having us on. And then it makes me think about Pete, who is so good at what he does.
Yeah.
But Pete Stacker, for those of you,
course, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if you think about like real men of genius, I think that's Pete having some fun at his own expense.
Yes.
And it's so brilliant.
Yeah.
But, you talk about, I think what I always do, what I do most, what I book most is, okay, here's the deal.
Yeah.
I really don't care if you buy this shit or not. That's who I am.
Yeah.
But Pete has this thing of, listen, I know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Who doesn't want that for their product?
Yes, absolutely.
Who need to buy this? Shut up and listen to me. And then you add all his skill and experience underneath that. He has that sense as a human being. I know what I'm talking about. I'm confident.
Absolutely.
So announcers can be kind of strange. There are those guys that seem really happy that you're struggling with hip pain. But then there are those guys that are doing it, and they're giving you that price point because it's important. It's not just because the lawyer said it has to be this way. It's not just because I need to repeat this price 3 times. It's important that you hear this, and it makes a compelling read, I think.
Yeah, I really do think that we have, do you guys, because of the transition from the way the reads used to be, I think more now than ever, people who have acting chops. And I do think that, just as, literally the neurons grow in the parts of your brain related to stuff you practice, that the people who have spent more time in the domain of that kind of creativity have a more developed creativity, a more developed ability to imagine and become part of and engage the amygdala or whatever part of the brain is engaged, or work off the right side of their brain. When you read those books like Estella Adler, how she describes the way you imagine the chair and the cracking paint, and it's very tactile. It's very, very much right side of the brain. And so do you guys feel like you have an advantage these days over maybe folks who are less evolved as actors per se?
Gene, not sure.
I have no idea if I have an advantage over anyone, because casting is so weird.
Yeah.
I think casting is just weird, and with no offense to anybody who does casting, sometimes you just go, that's what I like. I don't care. That's
yes.
Mm-hmm. And it makes no sense to anybody. Or you read for something and they say, oh, they give you the specs and it's warm and friendly or whatever it is. And you hear the read and you go, well, that's nothing like what I thought it.
Yeah.
I thought it was supposed to be
totally
from our solar system.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah, you get Captain Kirk's girlfriend doing this.
Your interp of their specs is that far removed, but that's what they've decided. So I don't see it that way as an advantage.
Yeah, I don't know if I do either. To his point, like I can't tell you how many times I've looked at the specs of it, I've read it, I've given it the Morgan Freeman that they want, because it's always him, or
Same for me.
Yeah, like it's crazy though. Like, so you give them what you want, and then you see the ad later, and you're like, well, I could have done it like that if they'd only asked for it that way. I mean, but they didn't. It wasn't in the specs, and so what that often tells me is like sometimes they know what they're talking about, and sometimes they just want that voice, and they'll know it when they hear it.
Yeah.
May I share a quick story with you? When I lived in LA, I did some work for whomever it was, and the agency was in BF, Texas. And they liked to come to LA and stay at a swanky hotel, and they worked at Margarita Mix and and they would have a good time on the client's dime. And it was an ongoing thing for a while. And so one day we're in the lobby before the session. They weren't quite ready for us. And I'm talking with the lead producer on this thing and chatting. And I said, listen, I'm teaching a voiceover class. Can you give me some advice for my students to pass on to them about auditions? And the guy talked for 4 or 5 minutes, and it was wonderful. It was just, but I only remember the first, I don't know, whatever this is, 6 words. We're always looking for a guy. They're looking for the guy. And when they hear the guy, then they've got the guy. And then it doesn't matter how the lawyers change it. We've already got the guy. Oh, we need to cut a whole sentence. We need to cut 3 seconds from this. Oh my, doesn't matter. We got the guy. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's such a great point. I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to ask just a couple more questions along these lines. Do you guys practice in order to, keep the saw sharp for, so you can be more available to book stuff? And then I guess I'll just ask these together so we can, do you do any stuff like, make sure you get enough sleep, get exercise, meditation, diet, those kinds of things. Anyway, you know where I'm going with this.
Do I do stuff like to rehearse or practice? I don't know, because I'm kind of new to this recording at home thing, I find myself practicing as far as figuring out mic style. Like, if I have a new mic, like I got a new mic recently, and there's like, the distances are different on the mics, and where how you address the mic and what it does to your voice. And, so I'm trying that sometimes, particularly now in this world where, I used to just do auditions at home. I never had to do actual bookings. And now that I'm doing that, like, I'm a lot more careful about the sound that leaves here, like what they're picking up on their end of, source standard or whatever. Like, so I don't rehearse as much as I should as far as scripts are concerned, but I do rehearse as far as how I want my emotion or intention to come across on a mic. And now that I have more than one mic, like, there's certain things that I have to do differently with one that my novice, I didn't have to do with the other one, so I practice that aspect of it more than anything else.
I think mostly what I do is listen. I try not to shut off the commercials all the time, and listen and see I try to identify that. I said, what am I hearing? Who am I hearing? Who's this person? What is it that I've started to imagine? What are they doing? What's going on here? I want to steal that acting technique, that idea. What have they done? What can I tell that they've brought to it, that they've created? Who's that person that we think we hear, and does that help me to keep thinking about my okay, here's the deal guy?
That's amazing. You know what that reminds me of? Some time ago, I read a book written by Laurence Olivier, and he said that his characterization wasn't done until he looked at himself in the mirror backstage in costume before he walked out for the first time. And he'd say, that's the guy. And it's interesting to be able to identify with, it's interesting to be able to identify with a character, say, that would inform how you read something, because that's a fascinating way of looking at it. Yeah.
Well, I think, in terms of, if people are coming to this with questions about how to transition from being a stage actor to, for example, to doing some voiceover, more voiceover, a lot of voiceover.
Yes.
I think that's a really good thing to do, is to listen critically and see if you can describe what you're hearing. Is that the perfect wife? Is that the perfect neighbor over the back fence? Is that the guy, is that Mr. Know-It-All? Is this guy a weasel? Is this guy too remember Lorenzo Music? Does everybody remember Lorenzo Music?
No.
Carlton the doorman, and he sounded like he was always stoned, and he did a million, billion, jillion voiceovers, and they would always use him, and he sounded like an idiot. He sounded like a stoner, but he was too dumb to lie.
That's awesome.
You always knew what the truth was. He was trying to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But you realized immediately that the opposite was in fact true, or something different than it was easy to see how his point of view was entirely wrong. But that was his game. He told you the truth as far as he knew it.
Yeah.
But it worked for advertisers because it was so obvious that he was incorrect.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Was in fact correct.
So, yeah, which is an advertising technique to get someone to actively participate and conjure up what it is they want you to think about.
Absolutely. That's the whole game.
Yeah. So quick, what does work look like right now? And I think, James, you kind of already talked to that to some extent from the vantage point of having to get used to your home setup and how these mics work and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be we'd all have pagers. We'd get a page, and if it was emergency, it would be a 911. You'd go to a payphone or wherever was close by. You'd call, and they tell you where to show up. Whoops, press something there. And then, today's home studio requirements, there are so many actors, and I've talked to some who are they just don't understand it at all. And it can be very stressful, even though there can be things that are pretty straightforward. But, and also the changing landscape of our business, from the standpoint of there's access to, pay for play, non-union actors. It's a lot easier. Anybody can record from home. Traditional advertising model with residuals is waning, and then you've got influencers and all this stuff, streaming versus traditional broadcast. But back to, I think a lot of people have questions about the home studio setup and stuff. And I want to toss it to you, Gene, real quick to talk about your recent experience, the opposite of what I've got here, because I'm also an audio engineer and I love the gear, but I just love the fact that, your gear means nothing if your read is not there. If you're not a good actor, if you can't pull off that, nothing matters. If they found the guy, they'll take the guy through, a USB mic or whatever. So I love the fact that, Gene, you did a gig recently. You can tell the story. Or did you already? I think you intimated it. Yeah.
I use a USB mic, a Blue Yeti that someone had recommended to me some years ago. I was on the road with a show, and I didn't want to carry, the box, the integrator box, whatever you call it, mic stand and all of that stuff. And so I bought this Blue Yeti. It's like $200.
Less than that. Yeah.
It's a USB mic. You plug it into your computer, and away it goes. And everybody seems happy with this microphone. We'll talk about what they're hearing on the other end, and they're perfectly happy with it. I gave my son my little Neumann mic to use, and I just don't even use it anymore. I've got my setup is a closet, and it's a fairly modern closet, with 2 bifold doors. So it's wide, not narrow. But I've put the microphone inside, literally, a cardboard box that's lined with flannel type material to also help deaden the sound. And then there's clothes and all kinds of stuff in the closet. But because the mic is isolated, I'm getting pretty good sound, even though the room behind me is open. I've only got, kind of, 2 walls closed or 3 walls closed off, and the whole back of the room is open. But people think that the sound is good and the soundproofing is sufficient because the mic is isolated inside the box. If you're interested, look up the Harlan Hogan Porta Booth. It works.
Yeah, and so it'd be funny if it's like someone handed cash through the screen to you. No, I was kidding. But the
Harlan will.
No, yeah, right.
He's a biker
awesome.
too.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I look, I think you do what you can afford, and at the very least, I mean, Source Connect standard creates an excellent quality connection with the studio that's going to edit and finish the audio. And you can get that, you can download it, and you can use it. You can, you don't have to buy it outright if you're only going to sort of use it through the pandemic. You can get a subscription to it. But at the same time too, I was
going to say that's my setup. I mean, I have the Source Connect standard or what have you. I think it's like $35 a month, and you get a gig, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And nowadays a lot of studios don't even want, or clients don't even want you to audition if you don't have, and it's got to be, the quote unquote paid version as opposed
Yes,
to
yes.
the one that's online. And I remember having difficulty even getting it started. It's like you got to be a port. Is there a port forward on your computer? All these things that I had no concept of. And I remember calling these guys at Store Settlements, and they took over my computer. Like literally, my cursor was moving around, and they had me up and going in about 15 to 20 minutes, and
Yeah.
with no extra charge. And so. You know, those guys will help you. And I mean, I have the most rudimentary setup. You know, this is a moving, I have a bunch of moving blankets, right? And
Yeah.
I have, you know, I got the egg crate carton stuff, you know, up and around, and, $120 mic here and a much more expensive mic there, but they often want the cheaper mic. So,
Yeah.
it can be done, if anyone's asking, like for very, very, very inexpensively. I mean, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to do this, to get,
Right.
like what Gene was saying, like, you have a box with, flannel felt stuff inside and a good mic. I mean, it's the voice they want, right?
Yes, yes.
And then it's a matter of being able to get them the voice and keep, in your home studio and keep the extraneous sound out, being able to
Yes, yes.
I don't know if it's, maybe Jess can answer this later, but I think that the webinar that was done a week or so that Alyssa and Tim and Dave did about, that's called MacGyvering Your Home Studio, will answer all these questions for you. It was really, really good, really well done, and fascinating information.
That's a great point. One quick note, and we'll bring Jess back to offer some questions. But one quick note is that for audiobooks, there have been some question. There was one question about audiobooks, and two things. Your home studio has to have an RMS of -60, and that means that it's like the real mean. Like if you turn your microphone on at the level that you're going to be recording at, and you just record room tone, and you run a gain plug-in on it, the RMS will show you the real mean. I forget what the S stands for, but the point is, if you have to have a -60, which is actually hard to achieve, it's surprisingly hard to achieve, and that may be problematic for those who want to record audiobooks from home, just that. And so you're going to probably want to make sure your environment does obviously keep the outside noise out, but also have acoustic treatments to help really deaden it down and have decent enough gear that the RMS, you can get it to -60 or below. So that's the one thing I would say as a caveat to all this. From the standpoint of commercial stuff, I don't think it matters as much, honestly, or maybe some other voiceover stuff. So perhaps we bring Jess back for some questions from the attendees. How did you approach the agent with the Gem of the Ocean voiceover when looking for representation? And what did he or she say?
I actually sent it out to, I think, maybe 5 different agents with like a cover letter. I mean, back in the day, you went to, what was that actor's shop on Belmont Clark? There's like a Belmont Clark Scenes. Was that it? It's like a bookstore. And
I knew what you're talking about.
So anyway, in there they had like an envelope, and it had like all these agents, and you had stickers, and you could send all these things to all these different agents and stuff, before email really was its thing. And I remember mailing 5 to each of these agents. My agent is Stuart. I've been with them for a long time. They got back to me and called me in, and we just had a conversation. And from that conversation, I think they decided I was perhaps a good bet to spend a year with and see how things turned out. But it really came out of that basic 60-second Gem of the Ocean voiceover that I did at Goodman, at the old Goodman. Yeah.
Wow. This is a long one here. Let's see also. Well, first of all, Gene, where do you put your copy when the box is so close?
It's a pain in the ass.
Well, no, let us know what you really feel. No,
Well, I hope, unfortunately, and I think it's a bad idea, and I'm trying to figure this out, just because of the way it's set up. I hold it.
Yeah, that works. That's kind of what I do anyway. I'm 6'5", so
One-handed now.
yeah.
I don't talk with two hands anymore. I have to talk one-handed. I'm no longer an ambidextrous actor.
I'm going to make a quick point, and then because there's the question here about getting into audiobooks, podcast productions, and stuff like that. I do know I did contact the union, and they were happy to send me a list of producers, or I guess production companies for audiobooks that do hire union talent. And so I think that would be a good place to start. And then maybe look, check out the stuff that Kevin Tice has done. I believe he's kind of one of the people to look to for advice on audiobooks. But here's a question about, how in terms of somebody in their 20s, it's Emily. Emily's part of the thing here, and she's just asking about, trying to book stuff that fits her voice. And she's got a snowball mic that she uses, and wondering how best to, and I would kind of go back to something Gene said, which is when you're listening to what's on the television or radio, if you still listen to radio, pay attention to what that character is, and listen, if you've got a really unusual sounding voice, or I used to tell this to people, that if they had an accent or something and you're not hearing yourself represented, that could be a problem for you. There aren't very many opportunities for, say, a British accent or something in American advertising these days. And so maybe that's not good. But if you do hear your range there, then I say that, no one else is going to be a better you than you. And, any ideas about that, guys?
I'm sorry, I was catching up on
that's it. I was just
stuff.
an answer to Dick's question, but that's always what I say. Why do we want an imitation? Anybody? They go hire the real deal. They go hire the movie star. There's no point in, or where, sometimes sure they want, if they say Morgan Freeman, it's not necessarily because they can't afford Morgan Freeman. But they want what he brings to it. What do you think of when you think of Morgan Freeman? What do you think of? What if they say Marilyn Monroe? What are those qualities? Well, those qualities, they're not asking for you to, probably not asking for you to imitate Marilyn Monroe, but what is it that she brought that we think of, or pick them, whoever those prototypes are. That's more, I think, what they're looking for. What's that person's persona, and how does that live in you?
Yeah, I think that's great.
It always seems to me like the people who really know what their thing is, those are the people who make a lot of money.
Yeah, especially if that thing happens to coincide with the bulk of what's out there. Like if you were to break things down and you say, all right, 60% of all advertising is this, and I've got something that can fit that very well, then you're going to do well. And I think practicing too, but I think also practicing, one of the things I think is really important is finding your center, not getting ahead of yourself, not feeling like you're not good enough as you are, so you stress out and you go too fast or something. I think people, if they can find their center and just sort of work from that. And also, I actually just practice just being myself, just sort of because, we can all add on. I almost think of it as like characterizations, like as an actor, if I were a stage actor, like if I don't like, look at me, I have a limp. It's like, I imagine like, what if there was like a pin in my foot and when I stepped, it hurt. Oh, that's different now. Now it looks more natural because I'm actually reacting to something. But so I can always add texture. I can always move into the microphone. I can always think about a character that would make me speak differently. But the soul is always the same, I think, from underneath in terms of how you relate to it as a human being. If you want to bring out emotion in something, that'd be my take on it. But any other ideas about that, guys?
Yeah, the reality, that's something that I will say I deal with even acting, like on stage or whatever, the idea of just the authenticity of it, like not, avoiding the affectation, just being who you are. And usually I feel like the gigs I've usually gotten, and I know this sounds trite, and probably because I don't practice enough and I'm not, all that stuff, but I will say most of the gigs I get are when I audition around 1 a.m. before I go to bed. I'm not affected. I'm not putting anything on. Like and usually those are the gigs I get. Often when I'm up and I have a 9 o'clock and I'm really auditioning and I'm really putting my best effort in and all this other stuff, I rarely get those auditions. And I feel really great about it afterwards. I'm like, oh, I think I got that one. I feel really good about that one. And I don't get it. Like, so I wish that I had like a secret to just being yourself. But often when that happens, that's when I get the gig.
Wow, that's amazing. I was just reading something about willpower and how by sort of the end of the day, you don't have the willpower, which is exactly what you're talking about to it's like it's waned. They call it, anyway, there's a name for it. But anyway, that's fascinating. Yeah. Any other questions you wanted to fit in, Jess, since you've sort of perused those?
No, I've just been listening and appreciating everything. And I guess maybe my situation brings up the first question, which is, I know that there've been plenty of people that have been at home trying to ask themselves, how do I know if I'm ready to do this at home? I mean, I think this situation has thrust everybody into the new reality of being the ad hoc engineer, being the this, the that, the other. If it isn't hard enough to figure out how to have a relationship with the mic, then figure out how to employ the mic and, access your means. I guess my question would be for folks that are trying to wrap their brain around that process. What is the best first step to feeling like you can apprehend the beast that is the possibility of doing your work remotely during this time?
Well, I can speak to that. I mean, please, if you guys have something to add, please jump in or cut me off. But I can speak to that. Being an audio engineer and actually having helped any number of people with their home setups, I'm happy to help folks. But there are people that, like I said, it's just not their thing, and it's very intimidating to them. And very simple things like the difference between materials you'd have in your house that would knock down reflections, and then keeping sound from the outside from coming in, or vice versa. Those are two very different things, and you can buy as many absorption panels and it's not going to keep the noise from outside from coming in. But those are basic things. So there's a couple of points that I can sort of cut right to the chase with. One is, you don't have to be an audio engineer. You're not going to teach this, so you don't have to know everything. So take a deep breath. Understand that there are a few things that if you can set your studio up and take into consideration just a few things that you'll know what you need to do in order to connect, in order to record, those kinds of things, then you're going to be good to go. And I think the other part of it is having access to, if you want to book, but having access to Source Connect and templates. So basically, learn what you need to know, which is understanding, and I know this sounds crazy, but understanding the difference between pre-fader and post-fader gain. Basically, when you plug your microphone into a mic pre, which would be part of your audio interface, whatever it is you're plugging in that connects to the computer, you set the gain on your microphone. And how close you come to your microphone, you're not going to be having an omnidirectional microphone. So if you have a directional microphone, the closer you come to it, there's a proximity effect, which is going to make it sound beefier the closer you get to it. Like, I don't know if this one does it, but it makes it sound bigger when you move in. And so the point is that each microphone is going to be different in terms of how close you want to be to get just, to pick up if you want to represent yourself. So understand where that is. Then make sure you understand where the setting is, that you have enough headroom so you're not going to clip, because you don't want to send them something that's distorted. And so the one thing you don't want to do is turn up your microphone from the mic pre. You don't want to turn that up to get your headphone volume hotter, because it's going to distort. You want to turn up your headphones after you get the perfect setting for your microphone for where you are and for the type of thing you're reading. Obviously, if you're shouting, you'll need to turn it down. So setting the microphone, that, and then being able to understand set up a template inside of a session with whatever digital audio workstation you have on your computer, like Pro Tools, Twisted Wave, Audacity, any of these kinds of things. You could probably even use GarageBand. Once you have it set up so that you know, okay, this is how it's set up, this is how it works. There are ways where the people at Source Connect, if you get a license, they will configure everything else for you. Just
so
save it. Yes, save it that way. And then you can take a deep breath and go, okay, I know that part's taken care of, because you're not going to be the engineer. So they're not going to ask you to do all sorts of other stuff that would stress you out. And so I think once you can get those things figured out and have enough so that you've really deadened, you don't want really much of any reflections for voiceover in your space. And it has to be quiet enough so it's not going to be killed from outside noise. Those are the main things. You can go crazy, or you can use, I was listening to a friend of mine using that Blue Yeti in a podcast, and I asked him if he was in a studio because it sounded that good. But it doesn't mean it's always going to be the right mic for every session. And so having, like, James has a couple of different microphones and a decent, you can spend some, if you're serious about this and you're going to get work, you could spend a little more money and have a setup that you feel good about. But anyway, I would say that pretty much sort of summarizes most of everything you're going to need to know as a voice actor from home.
Yeah.
James, Gene, do you guys have anything else to add to that, or are you kind of a concert of affirmation there?
I do not. I mean, I was thinking of it more in terms of if there are people out there who are just getting started with this and trying to figure out what to do, find a program like Audacity or whichever one you want to use. And I think it seems to be pretty much universal. No one likes GarageBand.
But it's more for music, I think. It's harder to do.
Something like Audacity or Twisted Wave. There are a couple of others, and you can learn about them. And then start noodling around, because probably you're not going to want to do very much to this. Once you learn where the record button is and how to then attach those MP3 files to your email and send that out to your agent, you're mostly going to be good to go. I think for most people, what you're going to do is go back in and cut the breaths so that we don't hear. Once in a while, I'll think, oh, that's a good read, but I don't like this sentence for one reason. I'll do a wild line, copy paste that in. Maybe you have to futz with the volume, but I'd say get that recording program and start goofing around with it. Who cares? Read the ads from magazines. It's the same copy. Just practice reading the ads from magazines. What does it sound like to you? What do you think? Is that good, or does that sound like bullshit? And just goof around with the program and see what you can do. Delete it, get rid of it, record some more stuff, and find out what works for you. It probably won't take you, but if you're brand new to it, a couple of days you'll have cold.
Gene, I think that's a great point. I think so much learning can be continued to be done when you don't have the thing you need to work on, because then you're under the duress of what that deadline is and wanting to make sure you submit your best take and whatever. But so much of that practice can be done, kind of ad hoc.
I was just going to say, like, just to cut in, like, just because I know, like, people are like, well, what do you have? What are you using? Whatever. So, like, for me, when I knew that I had to get it going, I knew I needed a better mic. So I got a shotgun mic in my kind of stand-up area of this cave.
Sennheiser 416, yeah.
Yes, I got that, the Sen 416, but I only really use that for, like, ADR stuff, which now when you do TV stuff now, you can't go to the studio, so a lot of them are using, I tried to make sure I had the mic that they use, and so I use that for that. And also, like, if you're doing that, like, big sound stage stuff, like, that works well with my voice for that. But most of the time I'm using this, like, $100 $20 AKG P220 that's like right in front of me right here, and that runs through an Audient digital audio converter, I think it's called. But you know, a lot of people use PreSonus, or they may use Focusrite, and you can get those for, you know, $150, $200, and that's what. And out of the back of that comes your, you know, your cord that goes into your microphone, and that's not a whole lot. I got some Mackie cheap speakers here that I listen to when I want to just kind of hear the mix out of my headphones. And then again, the egg crate stuff and the moving stuff. Like, I didn't spend a whole lot on this. So, I mean, the point of that is it can be done. Like, I hope no one gets intimidated by all the talk and the different things. Like, you know, you can do this in a box, like Gene does with the, you know, with the Yeti in the box. So it's like, again, I feel like it's the voice that they're looking for. And if you've got a voice that you can, like Gene said, that you can make sure they get, then that's the most important part. And are you going to show us your box, Gene?
Show
Yeah,
you my
let's see.
book.
That's awesome.
Nice.
On this door, I have a beautiful sweatshirt. On this,
That's the best.
I have a sheepskin seat from my motor
Yeah.
jacket. It's all in there. And I have this microphone simply tucked inside a cardboard box.
And with a red fleece blanket too, which I thought was red velvet, which felt very theatrical to me for a minute. Like you're
Yeah.
making magic into the small stage for your voice.
Gene, you broke the third wall, the fourth wall. Sorry.
As far as I can tell, people think it sounds good. It's a $200 microphone. You plug it into your computer. And your computer finds it, and away you go. And that seems to work. I had been doing auditions, you know, sometimes, or if I was on the road, I would take the sofa cushions and I'd kneel down and, you know, build a little fort around the microphone in the hotel room. But this seems to work.
Well, and I would also say that I believe most people have some form of a panel of experts in their lives. And this is the Enlightenment too, like showing us kind of, to reference your career, Gene, the man behind the curtain, but a little bit of the Wizard of Oz is like, how does it get made, right? Like, how are you doing it? And I think that's the thing too, is if you can construct your best version and then send it to somebody you trust and say, give me real feedback. How are you receiving this? What are you, like, that's a good trial by fire before there's money on the line.
Yeah, I would send it to I sent mine to my agent, and I said, so I just got this mic. How does it sound? Or I just got this. Could you check my levels on this? Like, and please just let me know if this is usable. And usually they're pretty honest about that, because they want to get paid too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also helps, like, to your earlier conversation, kind of about knowing your wheelhouse, like the announcer thing versus the character thing, and what your relationship is going to be to your equipment and how you're going to be working on your material. Like, that will change your relationship with your mic. And so knowing kind of what your likely technique is going to be, and then practice that kind of copy and try to have that kind of output and see what feedback you get.
I've often thought, if I may, I've often thought too that if you don't like the way my audition sounds, I got nothing for you. Sorry, I would love to do your job, but this is what I've got. This is what it's going to sound like, and I'm just not.
It's somebody else's job at that point.
Exactly, exactly. But if they've liked my audition, it's going to be the same sound quality and that sort of thing. And then once you if people are a little unclear about this whole deal with Source Connect, once you have that installed in your computer and you start this session, you're not going to do anything but talk.
Yeah.
All done. Then
Yes.
all you need to do is talk and make sure your internet connection remains intact.
It's just like doing an ISDN gig in a studio where you hear the delay and they say, all right, go, and you do your thing, and then you're done.
Through your headset and everything. There's nothing else for you to do. It's actually hard. There's more labor in your audition, because you're gonna play back, and you're gonna do multiple takes, and you're gonna cut the breaths, and you're gonna change the volume, and you know what, and then you're gonna tack on your slate at the end. And that the audition process is actually trickier.
Yeah. Well, I would say that unless my breaths are really horrible, I don't even bother with that. I mean, because it's kind of like, because sometimes, what's that? Say again?
It's just laziness.
Well, the whole idea is that, I don't want my audition to sound like I've edited it, but what's that?
Talk to your wife.
She doesn't want to hear it, frankly. But I got to say one quick thing here. So Joyce asks, any suggestions on a second take when casting requests 2 takes?
I typed an answer, but I'll repeat.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah.
But I'll repeat it for anybody that didn't see. You try a different lead in, try a different audience, find a different attitude. Go back and change that actor stuff. Put somebody else in the other role, and it's going to change completely. It's who are you talking to? Why are you having this conversation? And keep that person alive during the thing so that they can say to you, I'm sorry, what was the name of that product again?
That's genius.
Reason to say it again. Or maybe it's somebody that says, don't you dare say the name. Don't say that aspirin name again, so that you've got a completely different reason for saying it.
Yes.
Go back and do your actor work on this.
Makes sense to me. Nothing to add here.
Yeah. I really do think that the best acting comes from translating, direction into stuff you can do like that, and getting a variation on a read. Don't miss an opportunity to show something more that you can do. I mean, we've all complained here about the times where we audition and then we're like, wait, what is that? So cover a different angle on it, so that you don't, it's one less opportunity for you to see it on the air later and be like, I could have done that, throw something else in.
Gentlemen, Marcia Estelle is wondering if we could get a list of the products used. So I will ask you guys if you could email me what your hot tips are on the technology side, and we'll try to get that out to folks that are here today as well. And Sia is wondering, how do you handle an audition situation when you're asked to do 45 seconds of copy in 15 seconds?
Well, I find that when there's the more people that are allowed into the project to do their part of the project, to do their job, and your job is voiceover, the less likely that kind of thing happens. But yeah, I've had situations where they cut the studio out, and these people, they wanted me to record it at home, and now suddenly I'm the engineer, and so it was frustrating because they would send me something that would be, if I would read it, and I have to read it to find out how long it is, it's 3 minutes long, and they want it in 2 minutes. I'm like, well, that's impossible. I can do a time compress it, and it sounds like legal. And I'm like, well, that's what you're going to get if you want it read that fast. So it's frustrating because people aren't doing their job. It's not written by a copywriter who knows to read it out loud to see if it's going to fit into a space. And so that can be very frustrating. And that's a real problem, I think, these days with voiceovers having to do more of this kind of stuff and less people on the other side. They're just not spending the money for professionals to create this stuff. And we're expected to make up the difference. And it can be frustrating.
I think, if I may, that sometimes there are times when they know it's going to be a little bit long and they don't mind. They know they're going to trim this for you during the session, but this is where we are in this writing process, and we're going to let you read it. There are other times when it will inform my read that I go,
yes,
oh, I thought that was a good read, but gosh, I don't know what would be my benchmark. Maybe if I said, maybe that's 5 seconds long on a 30. Oh, the problem is my read. It's not the writing. For 5 seconds on a 30, that's me. I need to jack that up. And again, I need to find a reason to go faster. This needs to be more urgent information that I'm imparting to my neighbor over the fence about Tide laundry detergent.
I love it.
If it's more urgent or if it's more important, I probably am going to go a little faster on this. And if if you find yourself 20 seconds long on something that they call a 30, that's their problem. They've overwritten. Call your agent, see what's going on, let them deal with it.
That's a great point, Gene.
She'll be mad, but
yeah, well, it depends too. I mean, like if something is like a demo or something, and yeah, you're dealing with plus or minus 5 seconds. That's don't worry about it. And sometimes they even tell you that. But if you're dealing with an audition and it's a 45-second read and they want you to do it in 15 seconds, come on. Unless it's illegal, that's crazy. Read it that fast and demonstrate, and then maybe throw an extra take in with something that shows the way you'd read it if it was cut down, which it probably will be if it's not meant to be that way. You could probably tell if it's meant to be like illegal, or if you're like, that's obviously way too fast. So I'm going to read it at the pace that I think that they want, but I'll also show them that I can do it in 15 seconds if it's even possible.
Great. Well, guys, we have more than taken advantage of your time today. I'm going to give the round of applause right here on my screen to thank you for being here. Thank you, James. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Bill, for your time. Thank all of you for showing up today for yourselves and for one another. I'm going to also make sure, if you guys don't have our email addresses at the Kaufherr Center, it's my name, jess.jones@Kaufherr Center Chicago. And you could get hold of our media technician, Henrique, at staff@Kaufherr Center Chicago. We're here for you. If you have additional questions that we could help you fine-tooth comb as you work your way through your home and get your work done, let us know how we can be a resource to you. But gentlemen, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with your brothers and sisters and making the time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jess. You guys, amazing stuff.
Thank
Great.
you all.
Thank
Thanks.
you for doing this.
Take care.
And everyone, stay safe, stay sane, and we hope to see you guys soon. Have a great afternoon.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you so much. See you guys.